everyone. Welcome to episode 24 of the Hideout. Today, we're going to be talking about scaling solutions for Web3 gaming in the Metaverse. So, got a really exciting panel again today. We're going to be joined by the team at Wax. We're going to have Lucas here, the CTO of Wax. So, super excited. And then we're going to have Marcy from Shiba Inu. So, we're just trying to get Marcy on stage, and then we are going to get started. Give people a few more minutes to jump back in. But great to see you, Lucas. How you doing?
Doing all right. What's going on, party people? How
Doing
are
good,
you?
doing good. And then we got Spencer here on the Apollo account, right?
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's going on? So let's just I'm gonna try to ping Marcy here, and then we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Good morning.
Hello, hello. How's it going? Nice to talk to you again.
Nice to talk to you again. It's great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, cool. So people will trickle in, and then we have a lot of people who like to watch the recorded version of this. So it makes sense to just get started. I think what we'll do is we'll have quick introductions of the speakers and what you're working on and what your role in all of it is. And then we will jump into a list of questions that we've got prepared. Some will be for everyone, some will be individual questions, and Spencer will do that portion. But very quickly, for those who don't know me, my name's Nick Frontera. I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Apollo Entertainment, which is the studio behind the Satoshiverse. We're building a blockchain-enabled 3D gaming universe that we hope will kind of be the first iteration of how comic IP can be represented on the blockchain in a new and an exciting way. So for those of you who don't know about the Satoshiverse, check out our socials, check out the website. But what I really want to focus on today is our awesome group of speakers. So Lucas, can you quickly introduce yourself and what you guys are building at Wax?
Oh, for sure. So my name is Lucas Schlifka. I've been a CTO at Wax since 2018. Before that, I was a CTO at Grindr, which is still the largest gay dating network in the world. So I've been a technologist for the last 25 years. I worked on various different applications, including marketplaces, financial systems, automotive systems, social. And then for the last 5 years, I've been at Wax, essentially building our blockchain, which we launched back in 2019. And it's a purpose-built platform that is optimized for, high volume of transactions with no fees, which is really geared towards digital asset trading and game development. So my role here at Wax is obviously focusing on the technology, but I also drive some of our product initiatives, like our cloud wallet development, any sort of tooling and SDKs that allow developers to build application better. And I also am involved in some of the community outreach and management and working with Antelope Coalition on the core blockchain protocol development. Because Wax blockchain is one of the blockchains that is actually using Antelope stack.
Amazing. Well, I'm a big fan of what you guys are building, from a very early time when I was involved in the NFT collectible space. Wax was kind of the name,
Nice.
for scaling in Web3. So very excited to have you here. And then we have Marcy. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the exciting stuff that you guys are doing at Shiba Inu?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm Marcy Jastro. I'm one of two Metaverse advisors for SHIB the Metaverse, building 11 hubs and about 8 kilometers of land for the initial launch. For landowners, avatar maker, plot builder, game maker. Um, I come from entertainment and media. I've been in the entertainment and media space for about 25 years and have done everything from watching things go from analog to digital to workflows to understanding of VR and different tool sets that allow people to tell better stories. Um, Went from immersive into um, really just wanting to see all the new technologies and how do you build in interactive. So about a year ago, I met with the team at SHIB to talk about their metaverse. They had done a land sale, and Sherry and I came on and have been building ever since.
Amazing, amazing. Well, great to have you here. I think we'll get very different perspectives on this panel. So really excited to get into these questions. And to that note, Spencer, why don't you introduce yourself and then take us away through the question?
Sure thing. Yeah, my name is Spencer Vogel. I'm an account executive with Apollo Entertainment. I've been working on the strategy and business development side of things with Apollo and the Satoshiverse for the last couple of years. And I'm also co-host of the Comps and Crypto podcast, which is a podcast that discuss investing in the collectible space, both digital and physical. But yeah, so today we'll get into the questions. Starting out with a question for everyone, and then we'll get into some individual questions as well. Excited to learn more about Shiba and everything you guys are building. But I will say I've been a huge fan of Wax and have been investing and collecting on Wax since like GPK1, and pretty consistently since then. So I know a lot
wow,
about you
you're
guys,
OG.
but yeah, I guess so. But so getting into the first question for everyone, and maybe Lucas, you can start us off with this one. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges we're currently facing in scaling Web3 games for the masses currently?
Well, I think it's primarily building something that's actually entertaining and can be adopted by mainstream audience, right? Susie Cream Cheese, who is playing Plants vs. Zombie or Candy Crush, is not going to be, going through wallet setup and understanding cryptography and security. There's some pretty good challenges still ahead of us when it comes to adoption of blockchain technology. And I think we at Wax believe that gaming is probably the key for mainstream adoption, and it starts with building really entertaining games. That is why we launched our own gaming studio in 2021. So we want to kind of lead the way there. But also we focus on user acquisition and UX. So that is why a lot of things that we're working on are all about reducing friction. So Cloud Wallet, for example, is our solution to have a social sign up, social wallet with transaction auto signing. So you don't see that Web3 friction in your user experience, right? We just launched a Unity SDK that should allow game developers to just focus on building high quality games as opposed to focusing on Web3, solving Web3 problems. And then the next version of that is going to be geared towards console developments. We'll be essentially trying to offload any sort of Web3 friction away from game and into the wallet that's going to be running on your mobile device. Bottom line is mainstream users want a good zero friction experience that actually solves a real problem for them, whether that's entertainment or if there is a particular business problem that blockchain can solve. If we can crack these type of applications, that's when we are going to see mainstream user adoption. I think blockchain space focuses too much on technology and ZK rollups and whatever the latest buzzword is, and not enough on solving the real need for mainstream consumers.
I agree 100%. I think the friction is what is driving the the low adoption at the moment. And I think that I've seen it with so many different technologies where it's very complicated for a user to get into the space. I also think that there's an echo chamber. I'll use that. Shib Dream, who's listening in right now, I'll use that where people are sort of not getting outside of their community and trying to explain these technologies in a much larger way to the consumers and to brands, quite frankly. Why is it important for brands to be involved in this space? How can they grow? I mean, that was part of why Shib Army was super interesting to me, was because you really need a community backed um, to be able to really grow this and to get outside of that community and to scale outside of that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and Marcy, just flagging that I think your sound cut out a little bit. It got a little bit low. Um,
Oh, it
uh,
did? Can you hear me
yep,
now?
now I can hear you. I feel like I just turned my volume all the way up. That came in loud and clear, so that was good. Um, cool. So yeah, now you're back to it. But yeah, I totally agree. I think that the challenges are all somewhat interconnected. I think obviously we have our technical challenges, and we'll probably talk a little bit later more about back-ending, some of the blockchain functionality while still conveying its usefulness. And I think that's going to be, an interesting endeavor for people who are developing in the Web3 space, helping non, crypto native people understand what benefits this is all bringing. But I think, both Lucas and Marcy nailed it in that it it comes down to building experiences that people want to have regardless of whether you're on the blockchain or not, right? You got to build
Yeah.
fun games, you got to build fun metaverse experiences, and right now there's a bit of a disconnect between the incentives that are driving studios to do so. And so I actually think you're going to see a lot of hybridization over the next several years, where you have games that are being built with blockchain capabilities, but don't necessarily require blockchain in order to play the game or experience the experience. But that will be an additional layer that people are have access to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at not every single person though wants to do a gaming experience. Other people want to just do story experiences, or they want to do some form of entertainment. And so, if you're super focused on the gaming, I think that's great. But other people, and the mass majority of people, want to understand what Web3 is and what a metaverse is and what all this technology is. I think the more that you explain that it's about social interaction and the next iteration of what the internet will look like, that sort of changes the conversation a bit. And it's not just about the game being built on a blockchain, it's about an experience, it's about so many different other variables. And it just feels like gaming seems to be the low hanging fruit at this point.
Yeah, I think social interaction is very very important here, and I think Web3 lacks in that regard. I think on Wax we're fortunate that we have a very strong organically grown community that kind of does collectibles or gaming or some other applications. And I see in some other ecosystems they are very disjointed when it comes to like there's a particular drop for this collection, or maybe there's another drop for the other collection. Also, what is I think giving us a little bit of this headwind is that the current crypto community is very speculative. So a lot of projects that are kind of driving the hype are all about profit taking and quick returns, and not really about solving specific business problems in the real world. Um, and until that happens, mainstream adoption is going to be stunned. I think there are some brands that are, experimenting, and they found a sustainable business model. So, for example, we've got I think several brands that came to Wax Blockchain that did some drops, but they essentially ultimately did not succeed. But then you look at brand like Funko, for example, and Funko is very successful. They actually focus on community building, and they essentially connected their digital items collectible with the physical items. So there is a component in the real world that you can redeem, and then they found success. Right? They continue growing their community. So I think there are some learning lessons here for other brands that were maybe too focused on quick profit taking and trying to ride that wave, as opposed to seeing how Web3 can actually enhance their business and then enhance their communities, the existing customer base.
Here, here. I agree 100%.
So moving on to some individual questions here. First one, we'll go to Lucas. So Wax hosts some of the most popular games in Web3, like Alien Worlds and Farmer's World, with Alien Worlds even taking like the top spot of most played games on according to DApp Radar for I think quite some time now. So what do you think are some of the largest benefits for people to build their games on Wax?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. When you look at the platform, so I want to focus on I guess two buckets, right? So the bucket number one is if you are a developer and you are trying to develop a game that actually works, and you have a rich ecosystem of tools that allow you to actually build a really high quality experience, then Wax offers you very fast finality. We can scale up to 10,000 transactions per second. We have a lot of community support, APIs, and SDKs that allow you to kind of focus on building. And then there's also this thing that I mentioned, our cloud wallet through the account abstraction and permissioning scheme that is available on Wax blockchain. Allows us to do auto signing of transactions and operating some things on the behalf of the user, which kind of hides away any sort of Web3 friction. So you can actually on Wax develop a Web3 user experience that feels like Web2, and you still get the blockchain benefit of decentralization and full asset ownership and all that type of stuff. So that's kind of bucket number one. Bucket number two is the robust community, right? So we have a lot of people on Wax that participate in different projects, like playing different games or collecting assets or experimenting with DeFi and DEXs. So that community has been grown organically over the last 4 or 5 years. And, we go back way to, skins trading. I'm not sure if you guys know, but the genesis of Wax blockchain was actually OP Skins, which was the largest digital asset trading of Steam skins, like CSGO, for example. I think tapping into that experience is very important. One thing I want to mention, our motto is not building moats, but building bridges, right? I ultimately believe that, we need to be somewhat technology agnostic in how we think about the space. There's, I think, too much of silo building, and there's a lot of maximalists out there. We look at it, we have technology that works. If you look at the DApp Radar, we process 2.5 times the number of transactions per day of all other blockchains combined. And we sustainably see, half a million daily active wallets, which kind of, to me, the proof is in the pudding. We know the technology works, but we also want to make sure that whoever builds on Wax has access to liquidity in other ecosystems as well. So that's why we just launched NFT bridges to Ethereum and Binance. Polygon and Immutable are going to be coming next. So essentially, you can build your Web3 applications on Wax and get the benefits of scale and utility, while also, if you want to access marketplaces and other ecosystem, you can very easily do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No worries.
So next question is to Marcy. So I guess I first got introduced to Shiba in the middle of the first meme coin season. So I'm very curious to hear your take on how you guys went from being one of these most popular meme coins to establishing yourselves as, you know, an L2 and a metaverse, and really just establishing yourselves as a major player in the space.
Yeah, so remember, I've only been with the team for a year, so I don't have a lot of backstory on it. And by the way, I didn't even realize I was a SHIB holder until my son told me when I told him that I was going to come on as a metaverse advisor. So I wasn't really paying attention to the space um, because I was more focused on entertainment and media. But what I have found in this particular community and ecosystem is ultimately it's about building products and building very stable products that can be utilized by the community and by others who come into the ecosystem. And I feel like what Shai and Cal have done is really have looked at it and said, look, what are we doing? How are we doing it? How do we build it? How do we make it frictionless? The metaverse sort of came up for them in an epiphany from someone, and that project launched and it did very well. I think that part of it is education though too. So a lot of people in 2020 and 2021 were talking about metaverses, but they really didn't understand what a metaverse was, and so it just became this really hype buzzword. For me, it really is about community driven projects. And if you have a vibrant community, building a metaverse is not, oh, let's just build it and they will come. I also agree that we need to be very open in times like this. Um, there's a lot of competition out there, or so it feels like, but the consolidation of that competition and being able to work together to grow the ecosystem outside of SHIB and inside of SHIB is super important as well. So building bridges is a very important concept as well, and I agree with that. But for me, the metaverse is really focused on the community of SHIB and building experiences that they want. So it makes it much easier. You're not building in a black box. You're actually getting feedback from the community of what they like, what they don't like, and how to move forward with it. And so I think that that's really what sets our metaverse aside, is that we have very focused people who are super interested to see where we're going to take it and when it's being released and when.
Everybody wants to know when, of course.
When, Lambo.
Yep.
And that's a really good important point too. It really should be about longevity. It should be about reoccurring revenue, figuring out ways to make these products scalable, figuring out ways to get them outside so that that's what I do for a living. Like, I am a go to market strategist on products, taking a product that is built, wrap it up, market it, and then get it out there to the masses. And so that's what I think lacks in any business. I see it in entertainment and media all the time. People build products, but they don't know how to monetize those products. And so that's what's really interesting about coming into a very early part of this whole world, right? Because you can build something, but if you haven't packaged it and productized it, then it's just going to sit there and not be monetizable. So I think long-term vision, really where you're going with your products, how you're rolling out your products, making them frictionless, and then education to the masses.
Totally. Well, thanks for sharing your perspective on that. So next question is to Nick. What is the Satoshiverse doing to make sure that his game can scale to the masses?
Yeah, so I think for us, it's kind of, what I touched on before, right? Which is kind of having a two-pronged approach to it. For one, we are reducing the places where blockchain needs to be involved in what we're building to that, really to get it in that central ownership layer, right? Like if you for us, and kind of my quick background was I was an IP lawyer before I started doing all this. So for me, the big problem that blockchain solved was the ownership of digital assets. And so, we obviously have a very blockchain driven lore, but at the end of the day, we're building a game that will stand on its own as a non-blockchain game, which is where we think eventually all games will be quote unquote non-blockchain games, but the ownership layer, the NFTs, the things you can do are on the blockchain, right? And I think that over time that is, I guess, the ideal for Web3 gaming and blockchain gaming is that you're going to back end, all these features, and it will be that completely frictionless experience, and people will simply understand that they have rights to digital assets just like they have rights to physical assets. But I guess the flip side of that, kind of recognizing that we're probably quite a ways away from having that smooth onboarding. The technology is lacking. Some of the tools are just being developed now, and every couple of weeks I get excited because there's a new SDK, or a blockchain is doing something new to really make it easier for developers. But currently, it's not quite there yet. So one of the other things we're doing is really trying to think what we can do to be chain agnostic on our side. So, we have our plans to launch with Ethereum, which we've already launched on, and Polygon. But our kind of ethos is that we want to be able to support multiple blockchains with bridges, and being able to let the users select which blockchain that they'd like to be on. So I think from a scaling perspective, by essentially creating a game that can function outside of all of it, there's a lot we can do in terms of that ownership layer to create those, that smooth onboarding essentially of the blockchain onto our platform as the tooling becomes better, rather than, needing to point to a blockchain and say, hey, we're building on this blockchain, so let's just, work super closely with that one particular blockchain and figure out, how we make it work. I think that's kind of the state of the affair right now, and it kind of has been for the last 2 years. But, as Lucas mentioned, these solutions are coming, right? And so, we're building in Unreal, and more I hear about Unreal SDKs coming through, but there's already a bunch of Unity SDKs. And so we're definitely looking for that kind of interplay where it becomes easy to support 5 to 10 blockchains within a single game.
Awesome. Thanks. So the next question is going to be to everyone, and maybe Marcy, you could start us off with this one. So how do we best communicate the benefits of blockchain to the mainstream masses as we try to scale to bigger audiences?
Education, education, education. Like I feel like if you aren't in this space, it takes a mass amount of education to get people's head wrapped around what it is that blockchain can do, what crypto is, what a metaverse is. And so it's really just holding spaces like this and trying to get outside your initial community. Um, that and doing as many panels and conversations as you possibly can. And then, brands toe dipping. I think that that's super important as well, because that gives you scalability and it gives you a larger voice in mainstream. But I feel like there's such a lack of education to outside people. And and I think that starts like in universities and all over. So making as many partnerships with people who are doing education in this space is super important.
Lucas and Nick, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, educating is so important. And then I think it just becomes, how are we educating people and on what, right? And I think for me, it's about simplifying the pitch, right? And I think part of the problem with the pitch over the last 3 years is that it was either highly political or highly technical. And, I think that appeals to a very particular part, each one appeals to a very particular part of the population, but it's not a majority in either case. And so I think what we need to do is find the value adds of blockchain that are more, mass appealing. For example, as we go towards a digital future, the idea of digital ownership and just helping people understand that currently there are different rights with digital assets versus physical assets. And because certain, legal standards don't exist and can't exist in the current schema, we don't have those rights that we have for physical property with digital property, and helping them understand that blockchain potentially solves that for digital money, for digital items, for video gaming, for metaverse, for whatever it is. And then I think, with metaverse, and specifically, I think, that's kind of as far as the blockchain angle may go. I think there are really interesting opportunities from a community level, like Marcy was saying, just because you can kind of group people by their holder status rather than by their, by whatever other indicator we may have used in the past to group people. I think we can see, oh, all of these people are, SHIB Army, or all these people are Legionnaires, or, they all have collected NFTs on Wax, and you can kind of tailor your messaging and the events you do and the experiences you create for that particular, subset for your community. And then the metaverse kind of becomes a collection of all these different experiences and communities. And I do think that the ownership layer of blockchain also kind of opens that up. But I do think everything has to become a lot simpler and more easily digestible if people are going to really internalize what these benefits are.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I also look at it is we're all right now living in a 2D world where we have these screens in front of us, where we have very little voice interaction. Maybe it's typing interaction. You've got thousands of different social media platforms. So if we could coalesce all that and put it into the metaverse and have every communication be a part of that sort of ecosystem, socializing, interaction, all of that helps the situation as well.
For me, it's about solving a specific business use case that has mainstream consumer adoption, and then education comes second. I think so for example, we talk about true ownership of your digital asset. Why is that important? Right. So let's look, for example, at CS:GO skins that are being traded on Steam. I saw the other day, I believe there was some rare skin sold for $125,000. Right. Well, that's great if I'm an owner of that skin. Steam at any time can shut down my account or essentially do something that takes that asset away that I just invested $125,000. Right, so that's a real application of blockchain technology where you can truly own your assets and nobody can necessarily take it away. Another use case that is very good for blockchain could be collateralizing collectibles, right? So I have not seen these use cases solved for yet, but imagine you're running a business that is facilitating collecting of rare wine, where you're essentially trying to collect wine. You're trading wine with other people, and every time that something transaction like that happens, you need to ship a bottle of wine. It needs to be appraised, needs to be authenticated, stored in a vault. Well, every time that transaction happens, there's a lot of friction because that bottle has to be shipped. It could be essentially tokenized, right? So it could be authenticated and essentially appraised once, stored in the vault, tokenized as an NFT, and that NFT can be traded many, many times between people who truly own the item without that bottle ever being shipped, right? So there are still a lot of business use cases out there for blockchain. It's just they haven't been discovered yet. So that's next, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, without going down a rabbit hole, I think your point about true ownership kind of leads to all that, right? Because, when we also need legal infrastructure and schemas for this digital property, which is going to be a new thing, as we progress deeper and deeper into a digital future. Digital property is kind of a new asset class, right?
Yeah.
If I have $1 million worth of Bored Apes and I get divorced, the divorce court's going to need to know what to do with those apes. And without, a digital property schema, some sort of infrastructure, you can't do that, right? Like there's no rights outside of the rights given to you by the holder. And even, with a game, it becomes interesting, right? We talk about true ownership, and, part of what I like to think about is kind of challenging myself as to what that means, right? And, if your true ownership is tied to a particular experience and the item can't exist outside of that experience, well, it may not be that they take it away from you, but it may just be that the experience goes down or it goes under. And so understanding, right, like what is the longevity to the item? What's in the metadata? What rights do you have beyond just the rights given to you by the company? I think all that actually still needs to happen. I don't know that NFTs alone solve that issue, but I think NFTs, for the first time in probably the 20 to 30 years that digital assets have existed, provide courts and regulators with an infrastructure through which they can create a system much more similar to what we have with physical products. And then it becomes easy, right? Because then you can go to a licensor and say, hey, we want to license Mickey Mouse for this set of 100 digital wearables that we're doing, and that'll mean something, right? And so you can have, all these different services related to that just can't exist without, some sort of, digital infrastructure.
Yeah, we've been working on a lot of patents in this area, especially when it comes to connection between digital assets like NFTs and physical asset collateralization, lending, that type of stuff. But ultimately, what's funny today is that the true asset ownership is actually scaring a lot of mainstream companies because they have very, very complex IP licensing laws, right? Like Disney, for example, Marvel, right? As much as they want the revenue from secondary item trading, they want to maintain the control of the IP, right? Yeah. They don't want their IP to be used in a way that they do not approve or use in a way that goes outside of their licensing schemes, right? Which means that as much this push and pull, as much as they want the revenue, they want to control the assets, right? Yep. So until these large companies actually understand better how this ecosystem works, or the technology advances where there's some sort of digital rights management system built into the NFT specification, then there is quite a bit of friction, right? So I think right now you see a lot of indie developers, a lot of companies that are essentially creating their own original IP versus like the big guys coming in and allowing. Imagine Fortnite, putting their digital items on chain. All of a sudden, there's someone else builds a better game that uses the same assets.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
They would lose their mind.
Yeah. And that is exactly what's happening in entertainment right now. Because if you look at the windows and the way the windows used to be, where you would release on the big screen, then you would release in the secondary market, in the the third market, you'd then do DVDs and Blu-ray cassettes. You had a really good system of making money all the way down the line. And I think that what's happened is they want to figure out what that secondary market is. I believe NFTs are that: assets, perpetual assets, persistent assets, marketplaces. But they're scared to death that their IP is just going to get completely thrown around. And so it's really hard, especially with entertainment, to try to convince them that building on a blockchain and digital asset collection is a good idea. But I think that as we move closer and closer and start building these use cases, you're absolutely right. It will start making sense to them, because at this point in entertainment, if you look at huge IP, they're not getting the benefit that they did before. So they have to start looking at new monetization models.
For sure. I think what we're going to see is a lot of these large companies are going to start launching their own private blockchains.
Yep.
And they will gate any sort of bridges and how that IP can leave that ecosystem, which kind of removes the true purpose of the blockchain technology, which is full decentralization and certain level of anonymity.
Yeah.
So we may see larger fragmentation in space, but I do believe that over time there is going to be certain level of consolidation, bridge building. It's going to be more like a network of networks environment. I think we're still very, very early. It kind of feels like, during the e-commerce boom, like 1995, 96, where there's still a lot of use cases that need to be vetted and discovered. Unfortunately, that innovation, I think, is still depressed, because the mainstream audience for all this stuff is still very speculative, right? So it has to, everyone here is looking for a quick profit, not necessarily solving a larger business problem or adding entertainment value. But over time, I think that will emerge.
Awesome. So before we move on to a couple more questions, every single week we do a giveaway, and we're going to be giving away one of our 8-Mo Army avatars. Our winner this week is adamola.eth, or at Adamola Wealth. So congrats to the winner, and please make sure you send us a DM and we'll get you your prize. So Lucas, I have another individual question for you. So you touched on this a little bit before, that you guys have already begun working on interoperability between doing like gaming asset bridging between other chains. Then I know you also have your DeFi system linked to Ethereum. I'm curious, kind of what some of your plans are with that. And then just in general, how important do you think interoperability and cross-chain transactions are for scalability of Web3 games?
It's important. I mean, I think people who build Web3 applications, they are not necessarily maximalists when it comes to a particular blockchain, right? They just want to build a product that works, that provides good entertainment value, solves a business problem, and it can be monetized in a sustainable way. So I want to highlight the sustainable way, because a lot of the businesses and business models that we've seen over the last couple of years were all about hype and just kind of follow the same pattern of massive hype, profit taking, and then crash, right? But you want to create inside something sustainable. On Wax, we solved a lot of user experience problems. Like I mentioned, you can have a full 2.0 user experience when it comes to user onboarding, how you interact with your wallet. And the next step is obviously then opening up our ecosystem to other networks as well. So then, if you decide to, let's say, build your game on Wax, and there is a heavy utility component that is using the chain, you don't want to be walled off and only have your assets available within our ecosystem, right? You want to make sure that you can have a business strategy where you can maybe do drops on Polygon or do drops on Ethereum or Immutable X or Binance, right? And then build that into your business strategy with as little friction as possible, so you don't have to build all these components. You can just kind of focus on either your game or the application that you're building, and essentially scaling your audience and solving a business problem, not necessarily on the tech. So that's what we are building right now. A lot of that stuff is already available for people to use. And the roadmap this year for us is essentially building a lot of interoperability and then solving these UX, user adoption type of problems.
Awesome, thank you. And then Marcy, what are some of the biggest benefits to building on the Shibarium network?
Well, I think it's scalability, lower fees, a new chain, also the community. So what you get with Shib Army is you get everybody kind of rallying around people who are building within our ecosystem and who want to be a part of our ecosystem. And I have to say, I've never seen a community the way Shib Army is structured. It's actually one of the most uplifting places. Yeah, sure, there's a fair amount of drama in any community, just like a family, but ultimately you can really kind of step into it in a real frictionless way, which I like a lot. Um, and I think that it's really to the credit of the devs where they have honestly continued to build and build and build. And I think the biggest frustration that I've had is ultimately the one sort of conversation. Um, the idea to build and to build it properly and to build it frictionless and to build good UI UX into all of these products is probably the single most important thing to do. And I feel like that the devs on our team definitely have a handle on that. And so it's really mainly about, a really great chain that is, that can scale and that's fast and ultimately has the backing of the community.
Awesome. So that's the end of my question. So I'm going to pass it back to Nick here to close things out or to keep things going if there's anything else you want to continue to discuss.
Yeah, no, I think there were some really good points here, and I think that both before I do these panels, I definitely look pretty deep into what everybody's been doing, and I was really impressed with Shibarium. I hadn't known about it until recently, and I think it launched fairly recently, so I'm really excited about what she was doing there, and of course, Wax being such a staple, it's nice to see that you guys are continuing to expand and think about gaming. Where I'll probably be pinging you after this because I definitely want to learn more about that cross chain interoperability and see how we can work with Wax within our ecosystem and same with Shibarium. We had a call the other day, so I think there's a lot of potential here for the future. From our perspective, I think, it's funny, we say we're early and that's the conversation. I got involved in the space in 2017 and, then it was really early, but that messaging hasn't really changed as we've gone and grown. And for me, sometimes when I take a step back and I think about what things were like in 2017, where we were looking at, ETH as the only solution and Metaverse was, early Decentraland days, and now there's, 50 different projects creating a Metaverse, and all of them have kind of their unique angle, and that's exciting because I think that's what quote unquote the Metaverse is going to be one day, is it just an aggregation of all these different experiences, and it's awesome to see what developers have done, with this initial construct of Ethereum and the idea of dApps and smart contracts and where that's all gone. It's funny because I write our lore for Satoshiverse, and so much of it is kind of putting ourselves in the perspective of Satoshi and thinking about, what he or she would think about this whole situation, um, going into the last 6 years, 7 years of development on the blockchain, and how it's scaled so much already into so much more than that original white paper, said it would be. And I think that that's awesome. And I think that that's what's special about this space. When you put aside meme coins breaking the last, breaking Ethereum for the last week, I think, we've seen, despite some of the downturn in the market and kind of the bear sentiment, I think we have seen steady progress from the development side, and that's what really excites me. Going to these conferences, meeting people who are building, and learning about what's coming down the pipeline, because I think that's in 5 years what we're going to be talking about, not so much about these kind of ups and downs that we're having to get there. But really excited. I think everybody nailed it on community. I think without our community, we wouldn't be here. So thank you to our community for joining, and thanks to all of you guys who joined and listened to us for the last hour. We really appreciate you showing up to these, and we do them every week. So definitely happy to have you here. Of course, thank you to Lucas and Marcy for being here. If there's anything you want to close on, any last words or plug anything, please feel free. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, and we're really grateful for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Bye,
Take care,
everyone.
guys.
Bye.
Thanks. See ya.